Hello, my name is A. Joseph Dupre III. I'm a member of the Technical Product Management team within the Communications Solution Group at Keysight Technologies. And today I'm going to walk through the process of deploying the IxLoad application performance test tool using the Amazon Marketplace. And so we've had prior to this mechanisms by which you could deploy the AMIs, the Amazon Machine Images for our IxLoad test tool. You could do that either manually or you could create your own templates or share those with others. Now this tool is available directly in the place, which makes it very easy to deploy into a new environment. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to take us through the process of starting with next to nothing, going to the marketplace, choosing the template that we want to deploy, and then basically being able to spin that up in our local environment and only do that in a few clicks. So it's much easier now, easier than ever, to be able to bring up an initial deployment of IxLoad. Now that being said, just a few housekeeping items that I need to cover before we get too far into the process. I'm currently logged into a local environment here in the Amazon AWS console, and you can see that the only thing running is a license server right now. So just be aware that everything that's captured in this video is temporary and just used to create the video. This entire environment will be destroyed prior to the video being uploaded to YouTube. So just keep that in mind, that nothing that we create today will remain after this video. So you're going to see what things are like. So the only thing that I had prior to this video set up was a license server to make it easier, because I'm going to take us through the process of deploying from the marketplace our IxLoad, which includes the client and two VM1s we'll see, which are our Ixia virtual test appliances. Those are what generate the traffic. We have the Windows client that goes along with it, and we'll see a test run in the cloud and see how fast it is to get up and running doing that in this video. And so we just wanted to save some time by having a license server. In your environment, you would have, of course, you would have your own licenses or a central license server where you would apply your licenses and be able to run your test cases. So just wanted to make those proper disclaimers that this video is representative of what you would do in your own environment, and this environment does not exist after this video is recorded. Okay, let's get into it. So the first thing that I did was, again, log into, in this case, North Virginia, which is US East 1 within the Amazon console, the AWS console. And I'm logged in there, and then I'm going to take my bookmark here. You can search for this online, but you can go to the AWS Marketplace. This is the main page where there's all kinds of different vendors and things listed and information to learn. I'm going to search easily for now IxLoad directly. I can search for Ixia and get all our products in our catalog, or I can just search for IxLoad directly, since that's what we'll be using today. And you can see it brings it up, IxLoad. VE Virtual Edition, so Ixia Virtual Edition. It turns out that this version includes IxLoad VE and IxNetwork VE. Now IxNetwork is only at a beta level at this point. It has some basic functionality for network layer 2, 3 traffic and BGP. But we're going to focus today on generating application traffic using IxLoad VE IxLoad Virtual Edition, and we can see, I can click the link if you want to go and see other products by Ixia. You can see that this is our version 9.00. So for those of you who have been waiting patiently for the 9.0 version to be available, it is now available and right there in the marketplace for you to use. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Now there's a whole page dedicated where you can learn more information about the product, the versioning, what the licensing and instance size options are and the fulfillment options. And we do the fulfillment options by CloudFormation template, which is a great way for you to get started easily. The templates will let you deploy something very quickly. You can also take those templates and dig into them. You can download them yourself and basically dig into them, and you can modify them, make them useful for your own environment. But the great thing is not only will you get the AMI listings, but you'll also get an actual topology that works that you can use and apply to other environments. So there's a few different ones. Another key thing is that this is, at the time of this recording, and we're in September of 2019, the available option for licensing is BYOL, otherwise bring your own license. So you do need an IXIA license provided to you by your local sales team, so be sure to get in contact with them. Now I'm working with a preview environment, but this is basically when it goes public, you'll be able to serve that page and basically sign up to use it. And so IXIA does not do any pay-as-you-go licensing at this point. It is only BYOL. You get the license to run the product from IXIA, and then you have the normal, on-demand charges that you would have for any instances that would be running in the Amazon cloud, AWS. So a lot of this, again, you can dig into for further detail, including support contacts and information if you need to contact our support team on that. So again, anyone who's familiar with Amazon Marketplace has seen these types of pages for other things that they might have, such as a vendor firewall or other virtual network functions that you might download. So in our case, ours is focused on network infrastructure and generating application traffic within the environment that you want to test. In this case, it could be within the public cloud, it could be generating traffic from the public cloud to somewhere other destination, and so you can integrate IxLoad into your environment. And so by having these templates, we have a quick way to, within a few clicks, get up and running, understand how IxLoad Virtual Edition works in the public cloud, and then that you can take that information and modify and enhance things and suit it to your individual environment. So it's a great way to get started. Now you will have to, even though it's bring your own license, you do have to subscribe, indicating that you want to use the product. So you would click on continue to subscribe. Now, if it's the first time you've done this, it's going to ask you to subscribe. You have to acknowledge, the customer agreement. And again, I've already done that, so it's just reminding me that this is BYOL. There's no additional charges from IXIA within Amazon to run the software, but of course you do need a valid IXIA Virtual Edition license. You need one for IxLoad. You need either a Tier 1, a Tier 2, or a Tier 3 to run IxLoad. And again, the IXIA sales team within Keysight can help you with getting the appropriate licenses to run on that product, because you will have to register that license. That's something I will do quickly myself. It's actually, my license is actually already registered on a license server, and again, that license server is temporary, only for the use of this video, and will be taken down. But that will make our life easier. So I've already gone ahead and done that and registered a license that will let my IxLoad product execute. But otherwise, there's no other additions other than to accept the customer agreement. I've already done that, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to configuration. And it's going to give me a couple options for fulfillment. Again, these are done by CloudFormation template to give you some kind of references that are commonly used by our customers. So there are two types of templates. There are so-called one-arm templates and then two-arm or two VM1 templates. So in this case, one-arm versus two-arm or one VM1 versus two VM1 simply refers to whether or not you are acting as client only in the traffic that you're generating, the application traffic, or you wish to be both sides of the equation. So for a lot of environments, you may only need a single VM1, and you just want to generate traffic from that environment. So VM1 and Ixia Virtual Test Appliance are synonymous. They're just two different ways of saying the same thing. And so within those two cases of one arm or two arm, there are three types. So there is a basic one, which is what I'm going to use today, which is for demos or getting started. It's got the fewest number of configuration options that you would need to use to get started. So I'm going to use that because it's very simple. We have what's called our standalone option. The standalone option is very similar to the demo option, but it has more configuration. Basically, in the demo version, your VPC, your virtual private cloud, the IP addressing is all kind of statically configured for you, get you up and running. The standalone is very similar, except that you have some more configuration options around what you'd like your VPC and IP addressing to be. But it's still self-contained. It's still a self-contained environment with a VPC and two subnets. Same as the demo. It's just whether or not you can, through the CloudFormation template GUI, from when you're deploying CloudFormation, can you modify some additional parameters. So you can think of it in terms of levels of complexity. So you have very basic, where the vast majority is done for you. You have kind of a middle ground, which is still standalone, still self-contained, that is more configurable, and you can add things to it, such as a device under test. And then the third variant, as an example, is an add-on use case where you can use that as an example of how you might attach IxLoad to an existing environment. So you may already have an environment with a system under test or device under test, and you simply want to add IxLoad to that. So that's another great example that you can start with. So again, these are examples of how you would deploy. Each one of them will give you, access to the template as a reference, access to the AMIs. You can certainly go, go in and deploy things manually or with your own custom templates if you want. But certainly for customers who may not be too familiar with AWS, perhaps they've just shifted their solutions to the public cloud and are looking to test, or they may not be as familiar with IxLoad itself. This is a great way to help you get the stitching of the network together so that you understand how IxLoad works. So I'm going to go with one of the two VM1 variants, because I'm going to want to send traffic client to server from one VM1 virtual test appliance to another. So we're going to see a very quick traffic use case, and then you of course can extend that. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that. It's telling me the software version and the date that was last updated, and then I can select a region. In my case, I am US East that I'm using for my demo here, but you can select other ones. It's reminding you of the BYOL pricing that's involved. It's indicating to you what kind of the default of the template is. If you choose this default, you're going to get one m4.xlarge. That's for the Windows client that runs the IxLoad client, and then you have, in this case, two VM1s with a C4.4x large, and C4.4x large is a really nice balance. It's one of the compute focused instance types from Amazon, and it's a very good balance between performance and cost. So if you want to generate a fair amount of throughput, like we'll do here, if you want a few gigs or more of throughput, you can do that with a C4.4x large. If you download the template, you can get the list of additional instance types that we support, and you can configure that. I'm going with kind of the quick, easy launch right now, but on the prior page, you can always download under the fulfillment option descriptions. You can download the specific templates, and you can again choose those and use those other instance types, for example. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to launch. Just kind of reviewing what I decided, make sure I'm good on this. I picked the right one, and looks good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and click the launch button again on this page. And it should preload the template for me from S3, which it did. And I'm going to go ahead and hit next. I'm going to give this stack a name. something that would mean something to you. Just for the demo, I'm going to do, let's see, something temporary. And this is IxLoad that we're doing here. So I'm going to put a dummy optional tag. This is just to indicate who the owner is, because I'm working in obviously a shared environment here. That's optional. I'm going to click on defaults. Here's where you could override the sizes if you want, but I'm going to go for kind of the mid-range there. You'll have to supply and create, if you don't have one already, a key pair using the AWS console. So either select an existing key pair, or you'll have to generate one through the console before you start that process. So we've got one there, and then again I'm going to go with kind of the balance there. C4.4x large is a really good instance type, kind of in the mid-range, but you could certainly go higher if you need more throughput, for example, on the type there. But I'm going to stick with that default. So we tried to pick, you can see there's very few options that have to be picked in this one. So this is the very basic kind of demo, statically configured one. Now I do need to give my IP address, and it has to be the one that is seen to the public internet, right? Not my local private network here. You'll have to fill that in. This is going to be the IP address that is for your inbound security group settings. Okay, so this is not the IP addressing of the instances. That's going to be handled by Amazon. The template will define the private IP addressing because it's done, again, to keep this one simple, we statically define a lot of the IP addressing so we know it consistently launches the same way every single time. Of course, any of the public IP addressing that is assigned in this particular case happens to be dynamically allocated, so it's going to change from case to case. So when we destroy this stuff, it's going to go all away and not be there. But I have to allow connections from my IP address here where I'm sitting right now. And in order to do that, the easiest way, if you need to know, especially if you're on maybe you're traveling, you're on a different network, you don't know what the public-facing side is, you can do a trusty Google search that just says, "What's my IP address?" And Google will happily tell you what that is. So again, this is my IP address. I need to allow that inbound to the security groups, and I want to make sure I restrict that, from the rest of the world. So I'm going to go back to create a stack here. That was launched from me by the marketplace. I'm going to paste that in with a /32, and then that's about it. So a name that's meaningful to you for the stack, optional email tag if you want to label it in some way, and choose your instance types or select our defaults. Add your key pair and your inbound IP address, the one that needs to go into the security group. That's really all there is to that template. That's why I picked it. Nice and easy to get started. I don't need any. I have sufficient roles, and I'm not going to tag the stack today, so I'm good here. I'm just going to hit next, and I get a summary of what's going to happen here. And again, anyone familiar with CloudFormation, all that happened was that I was logged in to my normal AWS console. I went to the marketplace, subscribed if it was the first time I've done this before, picked my fulfillment option, which template basically do I want to use, and AWS assisted me by kind of preloading that information and choosing the right one. I'm going to acknowledge that the CloudFormation template will create some IAM resources. And I'm going to go ahead and you can drill into the template itself if you need to go into that further, but it's going to set me up what I need for the entire configuration. And I'm going to hit create. Now I've noticed that if you're not doing it directly from the template manually, it seems to need sometimes a little refresh there to kick it. Now I happen to be looking at the classic CloudFormation view. If you're looking at the newer one, it's got the similar information. Now this is going to take a little bit of time, but we're going to just kind of watch it here. I'm going to kind of force refresh, but you're going to see it build all the things that we need. Again, this is the kind of default use case. And so if things are statically defined, you saw that I didn't have really any control from the template to modify things. And you can actually see the template. If you ever need the template, there's many ways to get it. You can get it from the marketplace download. You can get it from CloudFormation after you've deployed it, and you can see kind of what's been put in there. So these are all the AMIs that you need for client and VM1 for different regions. So lots of information, if depending on what level of comfort. So if you're just a basic user and you're just looking to deploy IxLoad, that's what the marketplace access and the templates make really easy. If you want to get into the nuts and bolts, of course, you can drill down into the template and see how we stitch that all together. As we go along here, we can see some things being built. That's a good sign. I see creations of instances. Some have completed, some are still in progress here, which means that if I go back to US East 1 over here, and I do a refresh, I should start to see some things coming alive. Now what I'm going to do is, this is just for my local environment, so in order to play nicely in the environment I happen to be in, there's some additional automation that won't be true in your environment. I'm just going to flag to the environment with some optional tags here that I'm doing a demo recording, and it's okay for me to launch these instances because they are going to take a little bit of time, and I don't want any automation to come in and confuse us here. So that's just something that applies. Again, you can extend your template with whatever tags and customizations you need, but hopefully what you can see here is, before there was just the license server. Now there are 3 additional instances, 1 M4X large and 2 C4.4X larges, and those C4.4X larges are the VM1s, the Ixia virtual test appliances that generates the traffic. So again, one's going to be client, one's going to be server in our configuration, and then we have an IxLoad client. Now it will take a little bit of time for those to initialize. We do have to give them a little bit of time, so that you're kind of seeing as close to real time as possible what this looks like, to give you a kind of a feel of how long this takes. I'll probably pause the video at a couple of points, but it doesn't usually take too long for the first 2 to come up. You can see they've already passed their health checks there, right? So what I'm going to do is, while we're waiting for the other one to kind of do that, I can talk a little bit about the environment that was created for you by the template that you'll see if you kind of dig into the template's definition offline. But basically, there is one VM1 over here, and he is within a VPC, and he's got basically 2 interfaces. He's got an E0. That E0 is for the management, the command and control. And when I say management, I should really say command and control between the client, the IxLoad client, and the VM1s themselves. So all that, the statistics, the instructions, the things that get basically downloaded on demand to the test ports are through that communication channel. So that's the E0 of each VM1, and each of them has a single test port. We can see that that's on the 10.0.2 network. So there's 10.0.2.12, and it's actually got several secondary IP addresses. The other VM1, while we're waiting, again has an E0 on the .10 network, right? So that it can communicate with the client machine. And it's also got a test port that is on the .3 network. So we're going to be basically going from 10.0.2 network to 10.0.3 network. And those IP addresses are assigned by Amazon. In our simplest of configs, we statically request those and tell Amazon what we'd like to have assigned. So we kind of pin those down. Again, with the standalone config, you can either accept the defaults, or you can override with the IP addressing that you would like to have used. Okay, so that's those, and we also have now the IxLoad client. Now, if you're familiar with Amazon already, you'll know that even when the Windows client is up, because this is a Windows machine, even when it's up and theoretically accessible, it does take some time, because this is the first time I've generated this particular instance. The password information is dynamically generated on boot, so it's going to change, right? And that's why we're going to run this video and then delete everything. It'll be gone. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to try it right now, but usually if you're familiar with AWS, you're used to seeing this, that if I say get Windows password, for example, it's going to tell me that I need to wait at least 4 minutes. There's still some initialization that needs to happen. So the good news is your health checks have passed, right? Both your server and your instance health checks, meaning that things look good, right? From there's communication there and availability there. But you're not quite fully initialized yet. Windows has not gone through all the process, and Amazon has not gotten to configure my first time boot dynamic password. So, if you click this a few times, it's probably still not going to be ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to go grab that information into my copy paste buffer so that we can then do a connect. So that way we won't have to wait the 4 minutes. So I'll come back when that 4 minutes is complete and I have my password. But you would basically use your security key. You have a key pair that you have to create ahead of time, and you would have had your local private key, and you need to select your PEM file basically and decrypt your Windows password. So I can't get that yet until it's ready to go. But I'm going to go ahead and pause for a moment, and we'll come back and we'll take a look at that then, okay? Okay, I'm back, and so I had to wait, 4 minutes plus for the initialization to complete, get my auto-generated password. I've already done this, copied it to my paste buffer, but if you want to see what the window would look like, you choose your key pair path, the file it tells you which one that you associated with that instance, that Windows instance. You need to select your PEM file and then click the decrypt password, and that would get you your password that you can copy to your copy paste buffer there. Now, if you don't have a key pair, again, you can go to your AWS console in EC2, and you can follow the wizard for easily creating a key pair and downloading your PEM file. You can also now do this from Connect as well. So you can either do actions get Windows password or Connect. Will give you an option to get the password if you need it. You can also download the remote desktop file. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to launch that. And I want to make sure I've got... Interesting. Okay. Connect. Paste that in. Okay. And it's logging in with that dynamically generated password. That password should stay unless you change it for the duration of the life of the instance. But the first time, so unless you run the configuration to reset it, it'll use that password in the future. Now, I need to do a little bit of housekeeping stuff, and I need to check one thing here. Let's turn that off. Let us, I'm going to drag IxLoad down here. Just going to personalize this a little bit because it basically gets initialized with a clean slate, though it does have the Ixia software on there. I'm going to clean up my desktop a little bit here. We're waiting for some things to initialize. I'm going to launch IxLoad, which will take a little bit of time. I'm going to personalize my desktop a little bit more. Okay. Turn those on. Okay, load is launching. I want to see if, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use regular remote desktop because I want to be able to, I have a configuration file ready to go that'll save us some time. And I want to show you a couple of things with that. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this remote desktop session. And I'm going to pause the video for a second. I'm going to reconnect with remote desktop so I can get that file over. Okay, so hold on one sec. Okay, so we're back. I just wanted to reconnect my remote desktop with some resources. I'm going to personalize this. In the background, IxLoad has come up anyway, which takes a little bit of time. So let me get my screen here. We don't need to do an update right now, so I'll hide that away. I'm going to change my view a little bit. Okay, so what I want to do is grab here. I'm going to grab a file in a second here. I'm going to bring that over. Snap that into Documents, into the IxLoad repository. So I'm just going to bring my example configuration file. And it's pretty close to what we need. We just want to personalize it a little bit to this environment. So let's go ahead. One thing I need to do in IxLoad, again for this video only, is I'm going to grab my license server. Which is temporary. So I'm just going to paste that in. Okay, and because you need that, but that'll be yours with your setup. And now I'm going to go ahead and open that RxF file, the configuration file that I copied over. Okay, let's take a look at the ports. So we're going to add those, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my AWS console here, and I'm going to make my life easy. I'm going to pick VM11, and I'm going to pick copy here, the little copy icon to clipboard, the private DNS, and the other one is, so it's one's .11, the other one's .12, so I'll grab one of those, click Add Chassis, Control V. That should add a one test port chassis. I'm going to add a second one, change it to 12. and that's the second one, and I'm going to assign those, one to the client network, the other one to the server network. I'm going to hit save, just like to hit save a lot. Now what I'm going to do is let's take a look at the networks and traffic. Now you might have gotten this configuration from a friend. It's a basic HTTP setup. Let's look at the client side real quick. So I wanted to save some time since this video is not a training on IxLoad specifically itself, but more getting up and running quickly with a basic test. Certainly reach out to your local sales team to help you, your sales engineers, with configuring the traffic that you need to for your environment. But we're going to just take a quick look here. Basically, it's going to be, let's see, settings. So HTTP, in this case, it's just plain HTTP, but you can turn on SSL, of course, if you need to. And what I'm interested in is everything's kind of been set up for me already, so this is an existing config. The issue, if you remember the IP addressing a little bit, I briefly mentioned it back over here in the console. If you take a look at the test network, or you open up, VPC that was built, you're going to see it's in it's in a 10 network, not a 192 network. Now you certainly could make some modifications by hand, but that can get more involved for larger configurations and such. And you want to get the IP addresses that match with the configuration in Amazon, because those are the ones that are actually going to work, right? We're in a public cloud environment, so the public cloud does have a lot of control over who we are, what we can generate, and do things like that. Now that being said, some of the things like we do need to have the IP addressing match. If we go back to AWS console, one of the advantages of having the template fulfillment deployments are that things like turning off source destination checking are already done for you to allow you some flexibility there on sending and receiving traffic, within the limits of what the public cloud allows. But we try to turn on some of the defaults and things for you so that you don't have to worry about that. It's easy to forget that if you're doing things manually. Same thing with the config. I like to start with an existing config, but I don't like this IP addressing very much. My MACs are auto-generated. I'm okay with that because I've got source destination checking turned off on the VM1s on their test ports already by the deployment. So let's just use the easy way, which is there's this little button here. So I'm in the networks and traffic. If I click the update for cloud, it will basically query and get the information on the interfaces, and it will tell me what it wants to do to my IP ranges to basically make them match. And so it will not only change the test port's IP address, it will also identify what should be the default gateway from Amazon, as well as how many IP addresses I have on an interface. In this case, with the template, I actually have more than one IP address. So it's not just a single IP address, and it's certainly a different IP range. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply, and it says all were successfully applied there. And there it is. You can see I'm in the 10.2 on the client side, 10.0.2, excuse me, and going over to the server side, I've got the 10.0.3. So that's really great. If you have an existing IxLoad VE configuration and it's a protocol that's allowed to be propagated in the public cloud, because there's many different protocols that IxLoad VE is capable of. Some do not apply. For example, you can take an existing config and it can intelligently figure out how to remap that with this update network for cloud. I'm going to go ahead and save. I like to do that. Got my licensing in place, got my configuration matching, my timeline and objective. I'm going to try for 5 gig out of a C4.4x large. We'll see how far we get. Again, that's a good balance of an instance type. So I'm going to try for 5 gig in my objective. We'll see how it goes. and I should be ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and apply config just to make sure I haven't made any human errors. I've pretty much done everything through pre-existing configurations, automation, and the intelligent update network for cloud button to kind of make sure I don't make any mistakes as a human being. So I'm doing all the automation I can here, and we'll just wait for IxLoad to tell us if things look good. And again, what's great about this, if you're already familiar with IxLoad, and you take one of the templates and deploy it, you already have the stitching. All you got to do is match, again, select the proper ports with the private DNS or the private IP address, make sure those turn green, the ports are there, and that you got that stitched together correctly. Use the update network for cloud to match your IP addressing scheme to what's actually on those ports, and then go ahead and hit the apply to push down all that configuration to the ports. But you can see that the CloudFormation template that I used from the AWS Marketplace did all of the heavy lifting for me. I didn't have to sit here for hours, finding the right AMI, deploying the AMI, knowing how many interfaces to put on it, knowing what the interface settings should be, all that stuff. So saved me a lot of time. And some things take longer the first time you do it, but this is certainly faster than trying to do this all by hand. Now it looks like it might be having an issue with the license. So I'm going to give it a little bit more time here. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I think I may have to check the license quickly. If it pauses like this, so one of the good things about these videos is sometimes when things don't go quite, that's why you always got to check everything. If they don't quite go the way you're expecting, it might just be that the license server is not reachable right now. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to check that, and I'll come back once I've verified that. Okay, so I just had to correct a minor reachability thing on the license server side. So now we've passed the license check. So just make sure your ports 4501 TCP, 8890 TCP, and ICMP are allowed through to wherever your license server is. So that's you can get more information in the IxLoad Virtual Edition user guide on what ports you need to open for your configuration. But what I did was just a quick thing outside of this environment, made sure that was being passed through properly. The license check went through, test ALM is configured, press start to begin, and that's basically it. So as long as you have your configuration matching your IP addressing scheme in AWS, your ports are all green, your license checks out properly, you have connectivity either to your local license server or to an external license server, then you're good to go. Hit start. I'm gonna uncheck some things here. I want throughput and layer 2.3 stats here. And I see some activity. That's a good sign. And there it goes. Let's see, it's kind of leveling off there. We should get a pretty nice square wave out of this. So what we're seeing is our objective was 5 gig, and we're seeing that with the L2.3 stats, we're coming in somewhere around 4.8 there. So we're going to see it try to climb, try to go higher. Now keep in mind in the public cloud, things are a little bit different than what you might be used to in other variants of IxLoad Virtual Edition in the private cloud. Certainly, number of CPUs and memory have a significant impact, particularly CPUs when things are CPU intensive. But remember also that you're in the public cloud and you don't have as much control. Like when you're in a private cloud, you may be able to turn on certain options, turn off certain options, use every last CPU and pin it in specific ways to get every last bit out on the wire. When you're in the public cloud, you are somewhat at the mercy of the environment that you're in. That being said, there are features like AES-NI that the AWS server support for certain instance types that will give you offloading for HTTPS, for example. You'll get sometimes higher throughput there. You'll also have cases, though, where smaller instance types may be made of the same processor family, but there is some kind of bandwidth limiting or some other infrastructure thing that controls, you'll see Amazon designate certain instance types as low, medium, high, moderate, 10 gig. Some interfaces are 25 gig or higher. So just keep that in mind. Look at the rating in AWS, but oftentimes it kind of has a generic rating like high, and so like for a C4.4x large, when you want to understand what's going on, you can do this baseline. And so this is what's so great about deployment through the Amazon Marketplace, is that with a couple of clicks, I was able to select the template I want, create an environment with 2 VM1s, which are already stitched together with IP addressing. If I load up a config or create a config from scratch within IxLoad, I can easily update that config and match it to the IP addressing and generate, set my objective, try to generate traffic, and see what the actual limit is of that, not just high, or moderate or whatever it might be, but the actual throughput, for example. And certainly you can change your objectives. If your objectives are not throughput based, you may be able to choose a smaller instance type for more cost savings in the CloudFormation template in that dropdown, and do a connection per second or other concurrent connection type of test within IxLoad. So that's what I wanted to show you. Is again starting from the marketplace. First you log into your environment, go through the marketplace, select it. Go to the main marketplace page. Open a new tab here. So go back to that marketplace, search for IxLoad, and you'll see it there now. Certainly after this video is recorded and this is put up on the marketplace, you'll be able to do that similar search, find it, choose the template that you want to deploy as a reference template, and it will help you deploy that in CloudFormation like I did, and you'll be up and running with a topology that you can quickly set up IxLoad configuration and generate traffic. And that will be a huge step, especially if you're you may not be new to IxLoad, but you might be new to the public cloud, or maybe you're familiar with another public cloud like Microsoft Azure, for example, or Google Cloud, many others. And maybe you're wanting a quick way to kind of be able to compare things or get familiar with the environment. This is a great way to understand what the application performance of an environment is before you go in and add complexity like virtual network functions or other things that you might do, or hybrid clouds or whatever you might need to do. So again, if you're familiar with IxLoad Virtual Edition, you've used it in the private cloud, and you're moving over to the public cloud, this can be a great way to get started. On that note, I'd just like to finish very quickly by making you aware, if you're not, of the Ixia Training TV channel on YouTube. So go ahead, if you like videos like this and you want to get into the details of other Ixia products, or for instance, I did a quick search here and you're interested in other public clouds in addition to Amazon, you can search for how to deploy our products on Microsoft Azure, for example, and be sure and subscribe so you can get more videos and updates when those videos happen. So I'd like to thank you for watching the video. Have a great day.